So, wondering how might that contribute to that like fear of the world in general not being safe and the need for us to over um, parent in a lot of situations. And then, you know, you made a point, Stefan, a while ago about social media. And I think there are so many things um, between the news and then things that are happening nationally or internationally. We're just seeing and hearing a lot more of it because maybe there's more access, exposure, all of the things.
Well, neither of you read The Face on the Milk Carton in the 90s, and it
No.
shows.
Childhood isn't broken, but it is being reprogrammed. This is The Slow Scroll, a conversation about kids, tech, and the slow work of growing up in a world built for instant everything. We're not here to romanticize the past or panic about the future. We're here to think harder about what kids need, what adults missed, and how schools can be a place to get it right. Each episode is a chance to untangle the messy intersection of tech, identity, learning, and growth with curiosity, honesty, and a deep respect for what childhood can still be.
Can I just make a plug for young adult literature right here? Because one, I think as a person who grew up in a very small rural town in North Idaho, my growth and understanding came from reading.
Mm-hmm.
I would experience other places, worlds, people, right? And that was all, from what I read, and that sparked my curiosities, which then, led my decisions on where I went to college and what I decided to do and things like that, experiences I chose to have. So I just think that you just can't underestimate the power of that. And then I would say, and today, the young adult literature today, oh my gosh, it's fabulous because of the variety, the diversity in what you can read about. There's so much available. And so I just think that, I read young adult literature just as a genre of my own. I just, something I'm like, ooh, the new, that, Hunger Games is coming out with all these prequels. um, and so I just think that's one of those ways, right? In like, well, how do I start? Where do I even begin? I have to have all these crazy conversations. Like, you have conversations as they, you're open to those teachable moments, but this is value in having kids. And sometimes my kids are choosing to read things that I'm like, you're going to read another graphic novel. You're going to do this thing that's way too easy for you and you can blow through it. But if that's what they want to read, when they're choosing to read for pleasure, when they're choosing, like, this is just time to read, not for school, not for anything, it's just what you want to read, then I keep my mouth shut. Because are you getting lost in a world? Great. And yes, nonfiction is great too. I think you can also get the same benefits from nonfiction, but man, fiction is, and we're wired for storytelling. That's how we learn. That's how our brains want to learn, is through storytelling.
Here's the perfect segue, since you brought up storytelling. It's not literature. I know that, Debbie. But it's almost time for my annual Lord of the Rings rewatch. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what I was going to say.
Obviously, you start with The Hobbit.
Yes. The fact that Debbie knows that means I say it too much. That is coming.
No,
from
it's what my dad handed me. That was the first one. He said, "Start with this one."
There you
So,
go.
Can I share an embarrassing story about The Hobbit?
I think Stefan was making a point.
No, do that. And then I was going to transition us into talking about the three movies.
Okay. Well, about The Hobbit. So, I did not grow up with a love for reading. It was not modeled in my home, and I don't know. I think I was focused on nonfiction a lot, which can be great, but it doesn't pull you in, right? Like nonfiction does, and give you this alternate world in a way that you can imagine the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And The Hobbit was the first the first one that I really like got sucked into.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Wait a minute. Is your embarrassing story about The Hobbit that you read The Hobbit?
Well, so it was my fourth grade teacher who read The Hobbit to us, and the embarrassing part is not necessarily about The Hobbit per se, but like that I had not engaged in reading for pleasure until that experience.
Oh,
Fourth grade is the perfect time. That's the perfect time to start.
That it was almost verbatim for me, but it was Harry Potter for me. Because I was
Yeah.
like the same
As a read aloud?
Yes. Fourth grade, Miss Van Ens. Maybe it was fourth or fifth grade because I had her for both. And we read we read Harry Potter, and then just that was the first book that I ever had like an inner eye, like visual creation.
Same.
And I had this realization because I've always been into movies and TV. I was like storytelling, but I was reading like the fifth or sixth book, and I was like thinking about it and replaying a scene in my head. And I was like, what movie was that? Like, what movie was I watching? And I was like, holy crap. Nope. That was the book. And that was the first time I had that like click. I didn't know you could, So that's not embarrassing, Vanessa. And I'm jealous that it was The Hobbit.
Well, and then the movie came out, right? And how you imagine the characters. I think The Hobbit would, the characters as they were portrayed in the movie were not bad, but it was different.
They were bad
than how I envisioned it. So anyway,
those are bad movies. Okay, actually, a few of the things you said made me think of some of the movies we had talked about, and actually, almost everything anyone ever says makes me think of The Sandlot. Apparently, that might be my favorite movie of all time.
It's good. I love it.
Oh my gosh! So Debbie, you talked about them with your kids, but you didn't watch them. Vanessa, did you get a chance to watch any of them?
I watched Dennis the Menace. I only was able to do so with my youngest, who's 8. But I'm pretty well versed in The Sandlot. It's been a while, but I feel like if we go into any of those, I should be able to contribute.
It is worth a rewatch. Oh, Anna and I had more fun than the kids did. That movie rules. That movie rules. What were some of the things your kids said about the movies you guys talked about with them?
Well, the part that, and I'd forgotten about this until they were reminding me that it had happened, but it's the amusement park scene where they're putting the chew in their mouth and then they get sick on the spinny ride.
Yes.
And when it was very interesting, because I'm trying to think how long ago it was when we were watching it. I mean, it's probably been over 6 months, to 8 months now. But so I remember my 9-year-old asking when they were over there he's like, what are they doing? Are they supposed to be doing that? And it was sort of this realization that kids might go do things they're not supposed to be doing, like he was really uncomfortable with that idea of, first of all, these kids are doing something they shouldn't be doing. He had a kind of a visceral reaction, a little bit of like, I don't know if we should be watching this. And he kind of started like, he does this. And it's the same when there's like a scary part of a show, he'll go into his room and then kind of, so he was doing that. And then once they were getting sick on the ride, both my 9-year-olds were just like, nope, we're done. We're out. And so we abandoned at that point. I took them upstairs and we watched something else while my husband is older, so I finished the movie. So that was one of those ones where I'm like, okay, so yes, he's ready for it, but clearly the other two are. And of course, you know, my husband's like, come back, it's fine. I'm like, no, if their bodies are telling them that they don't want to watch that or it doesn't feel comfortable, then, I'm not going to make them sit through that because that was the kind of thing I hated as a kid when I was forced to, yeah, sit through things that I didn't want to watch. Uh, so that was really interesting to me, that kind of piece. But yeah, that was kind of the biggest thing we laughed about.
So I don't know that my family and I have watched The Sandlot recently, but I know that it's something we all enjoy. Um, it's funny that you say the thing about going to the fair because I had forgotten about that piece. Um, so I don't know that we've had any like real structured conversation around what happened, but I guess like the pieces that I enjoyed about it were um kind of like the unstructured nature of childhood
Mhm.
and like the importance of finding that friend group and how pivotal that can be around that age range as they, progress. And then we did have a lot of laughs around the Wendy Peppercorn or whatever her name is that
Yeah.
I'm gonna botch. Um, and I'm trying to think. I don't know. My son was probably like 12, so I know he laughed quite a bit about those pieces, but I haven't returned to it lately to get his take on it now.
Yeah, that was the part where I kept saying, "Are we sure it's appropriate? Are we sure it's appropriate?" And, you know, again, it's like Cam's like, "I was way younger when I watched The Sandlot, for the first time, yada yada." So I, that's just kind of, my own issue, right? But I do love there's like a nostalgic to it, right? This nostalgic nature, and then this camaraderie of these kids having this obstacle that they're overcoming and how people rise to the top, and it's all about their teamwork. And so I that does bring up a nostalgia that I wonder if that's just because of the age we are and when we saw the movie for the first time. I mean, I wonder if our kids will get that with movies now that they watch when they're older. But
Mm.
that is, I think, why, I'm curious to, you saying the best movie of all time after we all have heard your rants about Lord of the Rings. So I think you're gonna have to expand on that one a little bit.
Um, well, I'm a huge baseball fan, is the other thing. And so there's
America's
there you
favorite
go.
pastime.
Well, I mean, that was the sport I played growing up. I was never very good at it, but like there's something like romantic about baseball. It is just a beautiful game. We're also on the tail end of what might have been one of the second most fun Major League Baseball postseasons ever
Mm.
for me. The first one being 2007 when the Rockies were actually in the postseason and making a run. But the Mariners were a ton of fun to watch. The World Series this year was unbelievable. And so, like, I don't really watch baseball a whole ton just because, I mean, it's baseball. You're just going to sit there and watch baseball,
Yeah.
but when it means something, And so
Mhm.
there was that. Like, I've been missing baseball. So then we sit here and we watch The Sandlot. It also is so wholesomely positive and not in the way that like Ted Lasso is. Have you guys seen Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah.
And don't get me wrong, yeah, that's right, Vanessa. We've had this conversation. You got to watch Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong.
You
I
would.
love Ted Lasso. I love
Yeah.
Ted Lasso. And I love the relentless positivity, but also how they deal pretty head on with
Hmm.
some heavy stuff. Like that is a beautiful show.
Yeah.
This is, uh, it's wholesomely positive for the most part. There's some, I mean, if you look at The Sandlot, through the lens of 2025. There are some problematic things about pretending to be drowning so you can lay a kiss on the lifeguard. Uh, it's and and some of the narration around that. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like it'll be interesting to like rewatch this with the boys as they're older, because that scene went right over their head. And the theme park. So it was all. It was all four of us, my two boys, my wife and I, on Friday. We made a point to like make it a whole thing, and so we sat and they made it through the entire movie. They were having a good time. My oldest was cuddled right up next to me. My 3-year-old was cuddled with my wife on a couch. And at one point halfway through the movie, my wife turns over, she pauses the movie, she looks over and she goes, guys, this is my favorite thing that we do, because like we never just get to spend this kind of non-chaotic time together. And we're laughing at the thing and at the movie, and the kids are asking questions, and my wife and I are like quoting lines before they actually get there, and we're dying laughing. So like absolutely there was a nostalgia piece to that. But the kids also enjoyed it, and they definitely liked things that were that we didn't like. Not that we didn't like, but they found interest in other things, asked questions about some things, and I loved fielding the questions they asked. My oldest, has never really shown an affinity for sports. And again, he's 6, but not the most coordinated kid on the planet, not shown an affinity for sports. And that's fine. Like, I'm not a parent who's going to push him into sports at all costs. And I really want him to find his passion, and I've always assumed it's going to be like singing, dancing, because that's what he really likes to do, performing. But I would love to go out and just play catch with the kid, Guess what we did? So we watched that Friday night. Guess what we did Saturday? He asked if we could go outside and we could play catch and he could play baseball. And every time I threw the ball to him and went right past him, he ran past it and he slid on the grass to get it, just like they did in the movie. And it just grass stains all over his pants. And like, it was awesome. And we were out there for 30, 45 minutes, just goofing around, doing different. And like, so again, to the conversation we were having a little bit earlier, kind of what came after the movie was really great. And it's not the first time I have tried to get him to play baseball or soccer or basketball with me. It's just because dad's asking me to. He's just not really into it, but he sees it somewhere else, or or like a friend of his talks about it. That's typically how it goes, right? And so there was that element of it as well. But some of the things that I noticed, because it's interesting, Debbie, you saying, I wonder if they're going to have the same nostalgia for movies that of like their age as they're growing up when they're a little bit later. This is going to be the oldest person thing I've ever said in my entire life. They just don't make them like that anymore. I think there is a charm to these movies. So again, we picked Dennis the Menace, The Goonies, and The Sandlot. And I had watched Dennis the Menace weeks ago with the boys. We made a point to watch The Sandlot on Friday, and then I went and watched The Goonies last night, or tried to. I do not like that movie. I don't think it's good. I don't know.
Okay.
And I was having this conversation with Anna this morning. Why did that movie capture a generation? And it is not kid appropriate. Like, that is marketed as a kid movie. That movie is, do not watch that with your children.
That's what I keep telling my husband. I'm like, I just remember there being so many things, like kidnapping, right? There's the blender, the hand in the blender. That's the part that scarred me.
Yes.
There's a lot of running and chasing.
One of the opening scenes is one of the villains pretending to have hung himself in his jail cell. And so I started watching it last night. And my wife goes, "You don't want to like wait to watch this with the kids?" I was like, "I don't even like this movie." And I think I can think of things that like maybe I wouldn't want to watch it with the kids. And then like 2 minutes into the movie, we both went, "Oh yeah, no, glad our 6 and 3-year-old are not in here right now." Yeah. Right. Even if it's fake, right? That imagery in there, it's just not appropriate. And so I guess that's not really what I'm talking about when I say they don't really make them like that anymore. It's your insight to like your son having this realization of like, are they supposed to do that? Mm-hmm. Kids off on their own, breaking the rules, getting into mischief, solving their own problems. I truly believe, at least like I said this last time, in our lifetime, that is not as prolific as people like to think it is. I think it was there in pockets, but this truly free range, off on your own, zero parent involvement. I think it's romanticized by movies because it sounds fun.
Disney. That's how Disney, there's always that
Yeah.
parental missing piece that they do have to solve their own problems in some
Mhm.
ways, usually. So, yeah, that's
But like I look at these three movies and I compare them to some of the things that I guess I don't really know what's coming out now, but even Disney Pixar movies, those have really transitioned to like, the villain was your inner self all along, right? Like the conflict is you
yeah.
fighting inner demons and
Generational trauma with
yes,
Encanto.
which I think to our conversation earlier is important.
Yes.
However, experts on the subject I have heard say there is value in stories dealing with external threats. Like how
Vanquishing the bad guys.
yeah, like conflict resolution and how do you solve this like tangible threat? And what I think I love the most about The Sandlot is how his mom and stepdad just kind of got out of the way. They're a very small part of the movie. And like I wrote down when Vanessa, when you're talking about zone of proximal development, there's a scene where the main Scotty, the main character, Smalls, there we go, wants his stepdad to teach him to throw, and it does not go well. Right, where's the ball in the eye, stake in the eye, not going well. The very next scene, all Benny the Jet Ramirez does is throw it like you're throwing a paper out and just let go. And this kid's got a rocket arm, and he's like, stick your glove out, I'll do the rest. And to me, like obviously those things, that's not actually how you learn to catch and throw, but it was in my mind, at least, a little bit of a metaphor for like, we can't teach kids everything explicitly. There are things that they just need to learn from each other, from experiences that we can't control, that we have to provide the opportunity, or like you did earlier, Vanessa, capture the moment and capitalize on that. But you can't manufacture everything, which is why I sent you guys that other podcast this morning. Not enough time for you guys to listen to it. But it is worth checking out. It's just 30 minutes if you guys want to listen to that one.
Well, the little bit from that I listened to, one of the things that kind of captured me is in this recording that Stefan shared. It talked about parenting as a verb versus a noun. So as you were talking, Stefan, and a couple of things you said, Debbie, um, that's what I was thinking is like, okay, so this idea that students, kids were just out and like doing things without parent involvement. That was the connection I was making, is like you were a parent, but you weren't necessarily doing all of the things with or for the kids. Um, and I don't know that I've had enough time to reflect on that and my views, but that was something that came to mind. The other thing, separate from that, Stefan, that I was thinking about, like specifically with The Sandlot, but I also watched Dennis the Menace. And so I kept thinking about like, how might our perception of like good trouble or like permissible trouble be the same or have changed in the last 30 years? Because I find myself as a parent often telling my son like it's okay to be a kid. Like go laugh, go have fun, go out with your friends, go play, that sort of thing. And I feel like that is something that he's always kind of struggled with. Um so coming into these teen years through sports, he's been able to find a few friends where they have like similar interests. So in past podcasts, I think I shared about him fishing. Um, so that's been like a really positive thing for him. and a way that like he can go engage in the world and problem solve and, you know, just have those social interactions without us being present and, you know, always doing the guiding or finding ways for them to like interact in whatever their environment is. But because you guys talked about different pieces of the movie, I'm like, so again, like my personal, I keep thinking like, you know, if he was to toilet paper a house, like how would I feel as a parent? Would I think that that's like permissible, age appropriate trouble? Or, you know, like kind of where would I be on the spectrum of those things?
Vandalism.
Yeah,
Lock him
vandalism.
up.
Just different things like that. So when I was reflecting back to The Sandlot, I guess I was thinking a lot about that. And then Dennis the Menace, there's certain things that he does that the older gentleman, that's the main character, I can't recall his name.
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson is appalled by, and maybe it means I'm a bad parent because I'm like, those are just normal kid appropriate things that they would be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the line. I know you guys went through this. That's the line Anna and I are constantly flirting with our 3-year-old. Whereas our oldest has this, I think, overdeveloped sense of justice, you know, where there's a song on there's a song on the that like comes on as we're listening to music in the car, and it's got a swear word, and he's like, oh no, oh no, oh no, which like I appreciate, right? But every now and then, back in my head, I'm like, you little nerd, like, you know? But that's, he's got this, like, he's a people pleaser for the most part, and he wants, you know, he knows what the rules are, and he wants to kind of follow the rules, and he's not really breaking them the whole time. That doesn't mean he's a perfect little angel, but like he knows, and that we've developed that in him. Like he's gotten pretty good at that, and we try to notice the good with him. Like just the other day, the boys are playing on their own, and I said, or like I had gotten them like these like sugar cookies as a treat, and they asked if they could have one. I said, no, you guys need to go play for another like 30 minutes or whatever, and then we'll have the treat. And so then 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, a 3-year-old comes in. Can I have cookie? I was like, 10 more minutes, buddy. And next thing I know, my oldest is walking out of the pantry eating one of the cookies. And I'm like, I said 10 minutes. And he instantly puts this thing down on the counter and says, you know, his brother, insert name, said it was okay now, you know, which is like a perfect encapsulation of our 6-year-old. You just believed the 3-year-old. Are you insane? But he was also like, he was immediately apologetic. I'm, you know, like, I didn't mean to, like, he knows the consequences of that behavior. And I said, is your brother in there eating a bunch of cookies right now? And so then he goes in, he goes, no, he just has one. And I kid you not, the 3-year-old comes running out of the pantry, crumbs on his face, no cookie in his hand, mouthful of cookie, says, I'm not eating any cookies. Like, that's the difference between my two kids, right? Yeah. And so in my mind, that specific scenario, that's the 3-year-old's job. You know, he can't tell time. I said 10 minutes to a 3-year-old. That means nothing to him. That's on me. Mm-hmm. He wasn't being intentionally malicious, or he was in kind of a good spirited way, you know, versus it's a much bigger deal if he's hitting, biting, scratching, because he's old enough to know not to do those things. And just this morning, when his emotions get out of control, you know, he's a 3-year-old, he's not good at regulating them. He'll sometimes he'll hit, sometimes he'll you know, the other day he's gotten into verbal bullying. He said, like, your shirt is bad. I texted my wife. I said, our 3-year-old's going full Regina George. Like, what is happening here? But even then, I had a conversation with him about how words can hurt. That's not nice. And so now he'll kind of passive aggressively say, nice shirt, Dad. Like, I'm not sure I really believe you. But again,
or he's like, trying to like not hurt your feelings. It's like, oh, if I say it's bad, it's going to hurt his feelings. So if I tell him it's good,
there we go.
It's not going to hurt his feelings.
And
or
so
he's brilliant.
He is pretty smart. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he's just playing mind games with me. But to your point, Vanessa, like, that's the intent. I do think matters. Is there, like, if your son goes out and TPs something, is he doing it because he's got power over someone else and he is bullying someone? That's an issue. Or is he doing it to one of his friends? And that's where it's probably inappropriate use of boys will be boys. That term has been used for not great things to justify some really bad stuff. But like, there's certain things that are age appropriate or age typical, gender typical, that part of what that daily podcast I sent you guys covers is the effect that social media is having on parents is often overlooked, but it's essentially saying we know more as parents, so we feel the responsibility to be doing more as parents. So sometimes we're robbing our kids of developmentally appropriate things because there's certain things that we normally would either overlook or be completely unaware of, and that is totally healthy. But it feeds this fear of real harm and real lasting damage. And the landscape is different, right? Like, when you do something where maybe you could have gotten, like, you would have broken a minor law and you would have gotten away with it, and like, no one's harmed. When there are cameras everywhere and social media is forever, the consequences are farther reaching.
Yeah. I think you both are already doing it, though, where you're having these conversations. Both of you, sat down with your kids during these moments and like had, you engaged in these teachable moments, right? And so I think this idea of sitting down and having the conversations, answering their questions during the movie, right? Instead of just saying, oh, hey, kids, go watch that movie. It's a great one. You're right there with them. And it's just as much about the interactions during and after as it is, watching it. And so I think that's the answer is there does need to be some sort of, right, unsupervised risk taking that happens in childhood development. I do think, I think the Goonies, I think it's like an Indiana Jones for kids where it's just, very like, we're going to go do these kind of crazy things. And cause I always think about the little gadget guy who has all the fun little gadgets and stuff like
and
that.
Was actually in Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Right. Oh, you're right. There you go. And the music, and then and some of it's not meant. I think even when it was released, it wasn't meant to be taken seriously. Like that this was a real thing that could happen, right? I think it was meant to have this adventure feel to it. So yeah, if you do decide, I mean, I think 6 and 3, no, I don't even think I would watch it with me. Maybe my 13-year-old could watch it. But it takes context, right? It takes a lot of context and conversations around it. And that might include, I want you to take healthy risks, don't want you to die, get kidnapped, but I want you to take healthy risks and having those conversations. And yeah, I just think that's kind of where we're at with, the other thing the other thing I remember is that my son didn't like when he was pretending to drown in the Sandlot to get the kiss. He was very uncomfortable. He was very nervous. And the whole time, same thing, leaving the room, didn't want to watch it. And we were telling, it's a joke. He's pretending, we were telling him even just watch, he's going to open his, and he couldn't handle that either. And so again, I think that's just, things that you want to be aware of. And if I'm not going to make you watch that scene, if that's not something you want to watch, but Dennis the Menace, we had lots to talk about with that idea. He thought it was so funny that he was mischief. And my kids love Home Alone. I mean, that's they just are totally on that bandwagon. And so same thing. He just loves that silliness, the physical humor of it. You know what I mean? Those are the things that, I think it's okay to expose our kids to that, right? Because that is what childhood is for learning. You have to mess up, you have to fail, and it has to be okay. Same thing, right? If you're not messing up, you're you're probably not learning much along the way, right? You're probably doing things safe and the things you already know how to do.
And I think thinking in the context of schools, I'm going to say something that it's not. I was going to say something. I was going to say I'm going to about to say something that's anti-teacher, but it's not anti-teacher. It's not super supportive of teachers in general. And coming from a parent perspective, man, I as a kid was able to hide some missing assignments and behavior in class for a while there, right? Like I was able to get away with quite a bit more versus I have access to every intimate detail of my first grader's educational experience. And sometimes I still feel like I'm in the dark. Like I've got this like, well, what else happened and what else is going on? And I have to constantly like stop myself from over interfering because there's certain things that we just had my 6-year-old's conference last week. And there are certain things that like when behavior reports come home or whatever, well, so just so your son, blah, 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 today in class, most of the time I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. And that's what I'm talking about, being not super supportive of teachers. Like as a former teacher, I communicated behavior home and these things felt like the end of the world to me, but it's been very interesting as a parent to where I, especially at this stage, at 6 years old in first grade, I kind of want my son just socializing as much as possible. And so God help you if you isolate him in class, which we thought he was for a little bit. Like if you sit him alone because he's a bit of a talker, he's in first grade. They should all be talkers. They should all be talking all the time, not a first grade
and it's
teacher.
a skill. It's a skill
Yes.
they need.
Well, and yes, like
all the
they
time, all at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's what I told this teacher during conferences last week. I said, like, who's he sitting next to? He needs to have strong role models. And she's like, I sat him next to some bossy girls. I was like, perfect. Like that is the perfect scenario and that perfect place for him to be. But like what I'm afraid of is him socializing, being a bit of a class clown, being stamped out of him. And so every now and then we'll get like, well, Micah, was doing such and such today. Over half the time, probably like 9% of the time, we just ignore those things. Like my wife and I have a little mini conference where we're like, do we need to address this? And we'll have a little, how'd school go today? What did you talk about today? Did your teacher say anything to you today? And like, make sure you're listening when your teacher is listening, but we're not punishing that behavior at home, and we're trying to instill those values at home and be in constant communication. But as I'm watching specifically The Sandlot, because that's more of a group of kids and their camaraderie, all I could think of is like I want something like that for my boys where they have this like mythological problem, and maybe not to that magnitude, but like the fact that they have like romanticized the beast and Mr. Myrtle behind there being the oldest man on the planet, and like this whole thing. And then they're solving problems, they're building these little gadgets. All of that stuff is blown out of proportion. But that idea of they have a problem that they need to deal with and they're not going to their parents to solve it. That's what I want for my boys and the only way for them to be able to have that experience is for me to step back, is to be like, no, that's like, they should know they can come to me with anything, but they should know that they shouldn't come to me with everything. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary. That is so scary. That podcast, that one from the Daily that I sent you guys, this, I shouldn't laugh at it, but like I died laughing at this. They play the audio of this. This is Jenny, and Jenny, but that's not Jenny's dad. And if Jenny gets in that car, this might be the last time you ever lay eyes on Jenny. Like this very stereotypical like 1970s ad for child abduction, which was so blown out of proportion. Like this whole like missing kids are gone all the time, constantly being abducted, got so blown out of proportion, and it really did spur, I think, this like helicopter parenting movement over kids when it just wasn't happening that often. But it is the most horrific thing to imagine that your kid just gets abducted. And that's not to say it never happened. It's just the response to it was so disproportionate to, and so I think me saying I want to step back and let the kids solve their own problems and do their own thing is, I think for a long time has been like, that's just scary, right? I'm kind of losing the thread of my own thought because I accidentally raised my hand here and it moved my video around. It, but you know what I'm getting at? Like, I just want the kids to be able to solve their own problems, and I want them to be able to have these things that they don't come to me with, and like I kind of never really know about because they're just little things that they're dealing with their own friend group. But like, I feel like most of the social pressure is that you shouldn't give them that,
Yep.
Well,
small problems.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like that kind of connects back to everything that we've talked about, anxious generation or otherwise, is I think we keep kind of having conversation around like the safetyism piece of things and like how do you find that right balance between them having like the space and the environment to like problem solve on their own versus like when does it need to truly come to an adult. um but yeah, just what you were saying was making me think about that. And then I guess my other wondering or connection was like, okay, so when we were growing up, I feel like TV was definitely there, right? But even back to each of your points about like movies and are they going to have the same nostalgia? I feel like because it wasn't something we did every single night, it made it special. So, how might that be changing now when kids have 24-hour access? And then I was thinking, like, okay, well, the fear about kidnapping or the fear about, um, like these scenarios in which you don't have control and something bad happens is more and more prolific. So, even thinking back to the 90s, what was it? Like
Unsolved mysteries.
Yes. And like I remember watching that and there was someone an acquaintance whose sister ended up like her her abduction was part of that show. Um so wondering how might that contribute to that like fear of the world in general not being safe and the need for us to over um parent in a lot of situations. And then, you know, you made a point, Stefan, a while ago about social media. And I think there are so many things um, between the news and then things that are happening nationally or internationally. We're just seeing and hearing a lot more of it because maybe there's more access, exposure, all of the things.
Well, neither of you read The Face on the Milk Carton in the 90s, and it
No.
shows.
I wish I could say I had, but
because that was a thing. There were missing kids. No, I'm just joking. No, right. I think kids have always gone missing. Sorry to say, but I think in 2025 they're more likely to find themselves caught up in something like that via an online mechanism versus just
mhm.
getting snatched off the streets or another way. So I think while there's always been whether it's as big as we've always been led to believe or not, right? Sure, that that has been around pre-internet, right? Um, and so I think it is being adaptable as the world changes to how we parent and do it in a way that doesn't stifle the overall well-being, right? And I think what we know both from our experiences as parents and in education and things we've read and discussed together is that you know there is an impact on overall childhood development. I think even their brain development, the pathways they're developing, that can't be denied. Now, what are we going to do about it moving forward, right? Are we going to put the toothpaste back in the tube around our digital technology and how we access information? No, I don't think so. And so I think this is where I just want to see us moving forward and like, what are we going to do about it? And how is education going to answer this? Because going back to this idea of learning, like learning it's so unique and it's so personalized, and we have stripped all that makes it beautiful away for the sake of test scores and GPAs and these measures that, I don't know, it just feels like a race on a global scale that isn't the most important thing. And I know that's not a really popular, I know, and that's not to say, I just want us to not forsake what it means to be a learner, because I think that's going to be the thing that helps our kids be useful, not useful, productive members of society. Sorry, I didn't mean
Bunch
to
of
use
useless
such-
kids out there.
I didn't mean to say it like that. That came out wrong. Productive members of society is that ability to continue to be problem solvers and thinkers and know how to use their resources and know how to ask good questions. These are the things that are at the center of media literacy, of a lot of the critical thinking pieces that I know so many people are worried about with AI and what it's going to mean for education. And what it means is that we need to put our students and their learning and curiosities in the middle and then facilitate around that instead of the other way around.
That's it for this episode of The Slow Scroll. These are messy and important conversations, and we're glad you're in them with us. If something sparked your thinking or unsettled it, we hope you'll sit with it, talk about it, and bring it into your work with kids. You can connect with us, ask questions, or provide feedback using the link to the feedback form in the show notes. Feel free to share the episode, send it to a colleague, or keep the dialogue going in your own circles. Just don't stop talking about what matters.